Hey, so for all of you guys who saw my message that I call Him, right, which is the message that was right before this one in the sermon series, I don't know what happened to the bug. Yeah, so I'll have to figure that one out. Hopefully I can find it before I go to bed tonight, because honestly I'm a little bit scared of what happened to it. I guess just something between moving the video file from my phone to computer, and I took a little lunch break and stuff, but like even towards the end of the message last time when I was recording it, I don't know where it went. So let's be optimistic and let's just say it died on its own so that I don't have to worry about it. Anyway, for those of you guys who haven't seen the message before this one, you have no context or clue what in the world I'm even talking about. I just wanted to say I hope you guys have had a great week. I hope you guys have had a great day so far. I know that my day today has been awesome up until this point, and got that little fresh cut. You know, it's a little bit too fresh right now. Still needs a little bit of time to grow in. That's why I got it cut now, because you know I got to travel this weekend, so gotta be looking right for the travel. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So I just throughout this week, you know, I've really had. It's been an interesting time. Let's put it that way. It's been an interesting week. But God has shown His faithfulness through it. You know, I think it's funny how no matter what happens, no matter the circumstances, whether they be great circumstances, they be tough circumstances, or something that is easy, that just comes naturally, or something where you're having to deal with a lot of deep emotion and hurt and pain. No matter what is going on, God is faithful. God is faithful. God is bigger than our circumstances. God is bigger than what is around us. God is bigger than what is before us. God is bigger than what's against us. And God has a path for it all. God has a path for you to be walking down. And I just want to lift God up just real quick, just thanking God for the path that He has already created for me. Right? The path that God has already created and laid out for you. And all it takes is us being willing to recognize that there is a path in order for us to start learning where to take steps, right? And a lot of the times people get, and even me, I get frustrated sometimes because I don't know the whole entire path. You know, sometimes the road is a bit foggy or it's a bit dark, and you know, I can't see the steps that I need to take. But all that matters is that I know the next step that I need to take. Somebody just give praise that God is a next step God. God might not be able to lay on you everything that's coming your way, because maybe if God lifted the fog and you could see it all, then you wouldn't walk through it the whole entire way. But how many know that God is a next step God? God is a next step God. He will always give you the next step that you need to take. And some of us just need to lift Him up, give Him a praise today. Thank God for the steps that He gives us. And even with this, and before I get into this, let me go ahead and lead us in a time of prayer real quick. God, I just thank You for this time that I get to share, that I get to have in order to be able to communicate what You have put on my heart. And God, I just thank You for that opportunity. God, I thank You for the calling that You've put on my life. God, I thank You for every person who's listening right now. I ask that You come into my heart, that You come into my mind, that You come into my mouth, and allow me to speak the word as you have given it to me, and allow the people to hear it in the way that You need them to, God, that You would be able to work something through what's about to be said. In Your holy name we pray. Amen. But with this, right, with this idea of a path and steps, I think a lot of the times, right, it comes down to our decisions as to seeing it. Because some people can say, and I'm not saying some people to exclude myself, I'm just using it as an example. Some people can look in front of them and say, I only see a step, I don't see a path. right? They can look in front of themselves and say, I see a step, but a step is not a plan. A step is not a purpose. A step is not a passion. So I'm not going to take that step because I don't know where it leads. Or you can look in front of you and say, I see multiple different steps that I can take. I don't know which one to take, because whatever step that you take is the direction that you walk in. So how do you know between the different options? How do you know between the different colleges? How do you know between the different schools? How do you know between the different majors? How do you know between the different neighborhoods? How do you know between the different relationships? How do you know between the different spouse? How do you know which one is the right spouse? How do you know that what you're doing is the right decision when you have so many options in front of you? And sometimes we just need to take that step. But it's a decision. It's a decision most of the times, because we have to decide in our mind that we're going to take a step before we actually take that step. We have to be conscious, knowing this is the step that I'm going to take, even though I might not see the whole path, even though there are other steps that I could take. I'm going to take that step. I'm going to take that step. Sorry about that, my computer keeps going off. Even if you guys can't hear it, it's distracting to me, and so that's not going to help at all. There's a step, but the step is a decision. And we get to choose the outlook, our perspective. We get to choose the way that we see. Do you see what's in front of you as solely a step, or do you see it as the means to a path? It might not be the whole plan. It might not be the end product. It might not be exactly what God has given you glimpses of, but it's a step in that direction. It's a step. It's the next obstacle to reaching your destination. Because if you don't take the step that's in front of you, you'll never take the step to 10 fronts in front of you, or that is 10 steps in front of you. Jeez, I can't talk. And so sometimes, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Because even with my life, right? Sometimes I get nervous over that step that I need to take. Because what happens if that step is the wrong step? What happens if I mess up when I make the step? What happens if I take the step out of wrong intentions? What happens if I take the step out of ill character? What happens if I take the step and I'm not ready for what comes from it? What if I take the step and all this? They're all what ifs. They're all what ifs. It's all what ifs until you actually take that step. And one thing that I want to give you comfort of is that God doesn't necessarily do all things, but God can redeem all things. God can redeem a bad choice. God can redeem ill motivation. God can redeem a misjudged character. God can redeem a misplaced step. God can redeem an out-of-line judgment. God can redeem all of these things. So why are we worried? Why are we worried? Sometimes I think that we're worried because it's not efficient, right? We're sitting here deciding which step do I need to take, because maybe there's more than one step, and I'm worried that if I take the wrong step, that it will be a step in a least efficient way to get there. But here's the thing, some of us stand there looking at the steps for so long that it would have been more efficient to just make the decision to make that bad step and then get back on track than you having to sit there and decide which one it is in the first place. How do you know that it's the right step until you take it? And even if you take the step and you take a wrong step, God can redeem it. God can use that step, no matter what you take, to further define your path. One thing that T.D. Jakes said recently, he did an interview at the church that I'm a part of, and he came and said, my son came to me, right? I'm talking from T.D. Jakes' perspective now. My son came to me and said, Dad, what if what I'm doing right now isn't what I'm actually going to wind up doing? What if what I'm studying in school right now isn't what I want to end up doing later? This is what TD Jakes said in response, and he told his son. He says, son, even if you walk through that door and you realize that's not what you want to do, the door that you walk through will lead to the door that you need to get to. That step that you take, even if you've walked through that step and lived through that step and realized that that's not the step that you need to take, now you know which step you need to take. There was not an ill purpose behind taking that step. One thing that one of my good friends said recently was, you don't, because he was talking in context of one of his friends who has changed his major a couple of different times, and he said you don't have to look at it as these are two majors that I wasted my time on because I learned that I didn't like them. You just know now that those are two majors that you aren't passionate about. It's not that you wasted your time in those two majors. You use those two majors to help formulate a better perception of what you actually wanted to do in the first place. God can redeem all things, so we can't be held to a lack of, we can't be held to a standard of fear to justify our lack of a step. And we sometimes, we're scared because sometimes we don't find what we're looking for. But I also want to, sometimes we're scared because we don't find what we're looking for. But I also want to bring up at a point, we don't find what we don't look for. So even if you take a step and you realize it's the wrong step, taking that step is initiative to look for something. So if you don't take the step, then you're not looking for something. If you don't take a step, then you're not looking for the path that God has put before you. If you don't take that step, then you're not pursuing God's passion that He's put in your heart. If you don't take that step, then you aren't pursuing the plan that He has on your life. You don't find what you don't look for. And it takes a choice of our steps, our outlook, our perspective. It takes a choice, a decision, in order for us to make those steps. But really, it all, it's a decision, but what's the decision fueled by? The decision is fueled by our attitude. How do we view it? How do we view that step? If it's a step, right? What's your attitude towards a misplaced step? Because if the only way that you see a misplaced step is through negative light and with a negative attitude, then you'll find yourself getting to the point where you don't want to take any steps at all because you don't want to let yourself down. You don't want to get to the point where, because you view misplaced steps, right, as out of place, as a step back, as a stalling moment in your progression towards who you want to be, you'll eventually get so scared that you won't take a step at all. And there will be no growth. There will be no movement because you're so scared about letting yourself down. So it all revolves around our attitude, our outlook, our perspective on the step that we need to take. And all of us have a different step that we need to take. Maybe for some of you guys, you're watching me right now, and you might be thinking to yourself, man, this guy's crazy. I don't know. And yes, I did just have a real itchy eye. And it's itchy. Hold on, let me take a second. Better. Okay. So some of you guys might be watching me right now, and you're just like, well, why is he doing what he's doing? I'm doing it because it's a step. And let me explain a little bit further. I'm not preaching to a church. I'm not preaching to a group of people. I'm not preaching to a consistent organization. That's not what this is for. I'm doing this because this is a step. I'm not doing this with the intentions of trying to build a big YouTube foundation, right? I'm not doing this to try and make money off of YouTube or to pull attention to myself or to my ministry. It's a step. It's a step. I'm doing it because it's a step. Why am I recording this on a Friday morning? Because it's a step. Why am I doing all this stuff where I'm having to record 2 sermons in a day because I've been lacking personally? It's a step. It's a step. And I need to be faithful with the steps that I have in front of me. I'm doing it because it's a step. Some of you guys need to take that step today, and we all have different steps that you have to take. This is just a step in the path to get me to where I want to be, but it's a step. And so if I don't record this message, if I don't do these things, then that just puts me one step back from the person who I want to be. That puts me one step back from the place I want to go. That puts me one step back from the destination that God is leading me to. That's one step back from the person that God is having me work toward. That's putting me one step back from the leader that God is having me work toward. That's one step back from the mindset that He's trying to. You see, it's a step. I'm not doing this because this is the end all be all for me. I'm doing it because it's a step to get me to where God is taking me. And I gotta be faithful with that step. And so if I view this as what I'm doing now as insignificant, as unmeaningful, as without carrying a purpose, then I'll never take the step. But if I never take this step, then I'll never be able to lead a church. I'll never be able to lead myself. I'll never be able to learn how to write a sermon. I'll never be able to learn how to listen for God's voice. I'll never be able to lead other people. I'll never be able to do the things that God wants me to do as a pastor. And if I don't take the step that's in front of me, then God won't be able to do what He needs to do in my life to make me into the person who I need to be. But it's a step. It's a step. We live in the moments of the step. The step. And so many people get so discouraged. And we're going to look at a passage right now. We're going to flip over to Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs chapter 1, I'm at 9. There it is, Proverbs chapter 1. And we're going to read verses 24 through 26 to start off with. Now, just to give a little bit of context about Proverbs 1 before I jump in. Proverbs 1 is all about wisdom, right? And so Solomon, which is the son of David, is writing about wisdom, and he personifies it as a woman and with a voice and with emotion and character, and so he's talking about the pursuit of wisdom. And here's some of the stuff that he says. Because I have called and you refuse to listen, have stretched out my hand but no one has heeded, because you have ignored. This is an important word, ignored. Because you have ignored, intentionally turned away from, intentionally moved away from all my counsel, and would have none of my reproof. Also, I will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes. And then going a little bit further down, I'm going to read verses 29 through 33, where it says, because they hated knowledge and did not choose, it's a choice, the fear of the Lord, and would have none of my counsel, it's a choice, and despised all my reproof. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way. We eat the fruit of our way, path, and have their fill of their own devices. For the simple are killed by their turning away, ignore. And the complacency of fools destroys them. But whoever listens to me will dwell secure and will be at ease without dread of disaster. I'm gonna talk about the word apathy today, because I think apathy is so descriptive of the lack of, it's so descriptive of not seeing enough importance behind taking a step. In this it says, you have refused, you have not heeded, most importantly, you ignored. That's all in our control. All of it is in our control. Wisdom is in our hands. And I'm not saying that when you recognize that wisdom is our decision, then therefore you become wise. No. I'm saying that the ability to gain wisdom is in our hands, but we have to displace it to the right source. Last message, we talked about our identity in the source of our resources. If we don't put our source, ourself, into the right source, then we will not have the right resources to work from. Much like with our path, we choose where to put ourselves. We choose wisdom. We choose the pursuit of wisdom. We choose who to listen to. We choose who to turn to. And it's a choice. Because, and the reason why the word ignore stuck out to me so much is because for you to ignore something, you have to know it's there. You can't ignore something without knowledge of it being there. Because that's not what ignore means. Ignore means that you've stared at it, you've looked at it in the face, you've realized that it's there, you realize what it can do. Maybe you ignore something because you don't see the importance behind it, or maybe you ignore something because you aren't totally satisfied with it, or maybe you ignore something because you think that something else will be better, but it's a choice. You choose to ignore. You choose to ignore. You choose. It's a choice. Ignoring is a choice. Ignoring is a choice. And it's a really hard choice to make, because when we seek wisdom, we have to know that wisdom doesn't come from us. Wisdom can only be given through God. Wisdom can only be provided through seeking God. And so when ignoring wisdom and the way to get to wisdom, we enable pride. We enable self-reliance. We enable the lack of authority of God. But when we don't ignore, it goes against our pride. It's hard and it's difficult. Really, it's really difficult to accept that we don't have all the wisdom. And so what we'll do sometimes out of our own pride, and what I'll do sometimes out of my own pride, is I'll turn my head away from what I know I need to do, because I think that based off of the wisdom that I've gained so far, that I know the better choice. It protects my pride when I ignore wisdom. But we don't gain more wisdom by ignoring it. We don't gain more wisdom by turning our head away from it. But ignore is such an active word. It's such a personal word. It's such a personal choice, because what I ignore, you don't have to. And what you ignore, I don't have to. It's so personal, and it's so individual on its perspective. But what we ignore, we ultimately lose the purpose of, whether for positive or for negative. But ignoring is such a personal word. But the choice is ours. The choice is ours. And now this might help to clear up a little bit of confusion, because yes, the choice is ours, but the outcome isn't. When we choose to seek wisdom, right, from God, it's not from us. When we choose to seek wisdom, we do not, it's the best way to put it, we look at the path that's in front of us, and we don't have control over the path. The choice is ours about taking the next step, but the outcome is all God. It's our choice to take the step, but it's not our choice to design the path. Because then, by seeking wisdom, we learn more and more by seeking wisdom, the less and less that we know. And so by putting, and now once again, this is going back to the last message, but by putting ourselves into God, we start to develop a sense of a purpose. We start to develop a sense of passion. We start to develop a sense of significance. But that outcome is a result of our choice. The outcome is not in my hands whether or not I feel accepted. It can be my choice to put myself into the character of who God is, and that will give me purpose. That will give me an end result. That will give me the things that I am searching for, but it's not my outcome. It's not my outcome. And so that even takes a lot of pressure off of taking a step in the first place. Because you can make the choice to take a step, but the path is not yours. The outcome of the path is not yours. So the step that you take just helps to solidify your path. A step that you look at as out of place now, when you look back on your life, you will see that it was exactly what you needed to do to get to where you are now. If you didn't learn what you didn't like, then you wouldn't learn what you do like. A person who goes through their whole entire life loving everything ultimately loves nothing, because they don't know what they don't love. But by going through those tough seasons, by going through those difficult relationships, by going through the outcome of the decisions that we make, we formulate a path, because all of them are steps. And when we look back at our life, there's nothing other than God that could have led us to the point that we're at now. But the outcome isn't in our hands, but the choice to make the step is. Brothers and sisters, I want to challenge you to take that step, because the outcome is not yours. That's why we need to take the step. That's why the pressure of the step is out of our hands, because the outcome isn't mine. The outcome is God's. And I simply get to experience everything that he has purposed for me. It's not in my pressure to formulate an outcome. It's in my hands to make a decision, to make a choice. And I will eat the fruit of my ways. I love that. Verse 31. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way. What you do is who you become. What you do is who you become. Might sound simple. What you do is who you become. What you do is who you become. Who do you want to become? Who do you want to become? Do you want to be known as a good father? Stop messing around with a whole lot of women. You want to be a good husband? Stop worrying about having sex with a whole lot of different women. Oh, it's getting personal. And it's getting deep. What you do is who you become. Nah, I don't mean that in a sexual way. Don't take it out of it. What you do is who you become. What you do is who you become, and it's all your decision on what you do. It's all your decision on what you do. It's all in your hands. The choice is yours, and you'll eat the fruit of your way. If you choose consistently to, since I've already said it, I might as well walk down the rest of the example. If you choose to sleep with a woman the second that, you know, sleep with a woman when you want to, and then as soon as you get that, the second that you do that, then you leave that relationship. If that is the system that you are establishing within the terms of your relationship, how do you expect yourself to be a good husband? Because now you're training yourself that once you sleep with a woman, now you've had enough of her. On to the next. How does that enable you to be a good husband? How does that enable you to be a present father? How does that enable you to set an example for the next generation? Because the system that you're establishing, the choices that you choose to make, there's fruit that comes from it. And so regardless of whether that fruit is something that is going to push you towards what you need to do, or push you towards who you want to be, or push you towards the path that God has before you, it's your decision. And you're going to eat the fruit of your way. You're going to eat the fruit of your way. But I want to go back to that word ignore, right? Because there's a difference between ignore and ignorance. Because, you know, ignore is such a personal word, right? But ignore and ignorance, you look at them, ignore, ignorance, they both come from the same root, right? They both have the same root word. I believe that root is apathy. I believe that the root of ignore and the root of ignorance are both apathy. You ignore something personal, right? You choose to look away from something because you're apathetic towards it. You don't see the significance behind it. You don't see the purpose behind it. You don't see. But then also, ignorance is also apathetic. In some circumstances, sometimes we just don't know what we don't know, and therefore we're ignorant towards it. But I think a lot of the times people choose to be ignorant. And you can apply that to a whole lot of different stuff. People choose to be ignorant. It's a choice. They think that by not learning about something, then therefore they can't be held responsible for the view that they have. It's a choice to remain ignorant. Therefore, you're apathetic towards it because you don't want to learn about, you don't see the significance behind involving yourself with what it is. It's a choice. Ignorance, in many cases, is a choice. And they both stem from the same root, which is apathy. And complacency has a lot to do with apathy. Because if we don't see significance behind taking a step, then we'll be complacent. We'll start to remain in the same spot that we are in now because we're apathetic towards the step that we have to take. And so if you view the step that you need to take in an apathetic perspective, then you'll never take it. And so many of us wonder why we have an apathetic attitude towards something. And we don't see a purpose behind what we're doing. You don't see a purpose because you're approaching it with apathy. Let me write it this way. And yes, I do mean write it. I don't mean say it, right? We have apathy. Apathy. We look at apathy, right? To fit the example of what I've been doing throughout this sermon series, right? They're words within words, hence why it's called the Within series. And so, usually I'll capitalize the words, and in this case, apathy, there's nothing capitalized because you don't see a significance behind anything, so why would you ever draw importance out of anything? You're apathetic towards it. You don't see the significance behind it. But what I'm here to encourage you guys with today is there's a root that if we pull it up, we'll start to find what we need to be looking for in the first place. Apathy is a choice. We choose to be apathetic. And what I want to show you guys today is that when we cut out our apathy, when we cut our crap, and we start, apathy, we find the path. Apathy. We find the path that we've been looking for when we cut our crap, right? You cut away what's not important. You deal with apathy, right? You start with apathy. And we have apathy towards so many things, right? We don't see the significance behind it, but cut it away. Cut it away. And when you cut away your apathy, cut away the excess, cut away the unnecessary, you'll find that path. You'll find that path. When you start looking at stuff as having significance, when you start looking at stuff as having a purpose, then you'll find the path that you've been looking for. It's been there the whole time. It's inside. It's within your apathy. It's when you cut off the excess that you realize that it was there to begin with. The very thing that you've been ignoring is the very thing that can lead you to your path. And it's a choice. Apathy is a choice. So choose to see the path. It's a choice. And so if it's a choice to be apathetic, it's a choice to be complacent. It's all in our control. It's our choice to ignore it. Many times it's our choice to have ignorance. It's our choice. And one thing I just want to close with this, right? At the very end, verse 33, it says, "But whoever listens to me will dwell secure and will be at ease, without dread of disaster." Without dread of disaster. Not without disaster. If that's what Solomon meant to say, I believe that's what he would have written. He says, without dread of disaster. Not without disaster, not without dread, but without dread of disaster. Bad things will happen. The storms will come. The pain will come. And many times that forces us into a state of apathy. Pain usually brings out apathy. But when we look beyond and we view our God as bigger than what's before us, we won't hesitate to take that step. Even if it's in the midst of pain, in the midst of struggle, in the midst of confusion, in the midst of disaster. Apathy reinforces dread. But God wants to deliver us to a state where now we are not dreadful of disaster. We are not worried about disaster because we know that no matter good, nor bad, nor happy, nor sad, I didn't mean to rhyme there. We know that no matter what comes in, God can put out. God can put out significance. God can put out dread. God can put out, think of it like a fire. God can put out that fire. God can put it out. You're dealing with pain, God can put it out. You're dealing with insignificance, God can put it out. You're dealing with worry, God can put it out. You're dealing with stress, God can put it out. But it's a choice. And what we choose to ignore, we also choose to lose the purpose behind. What we choose to ignore, we also choose to lose the purpose of. What we ignore, we can't utilize. What we ignore, we can't utilize. And some of us have been ignoring God. Some of us have been ignoring God. Some of us have been ignoring wisdom that only comes through God. Some of us have been ignoring the seeking of wisdom. And I just want to encourage some of you guys today that your ignoring is a result of apathy. You ignore it because you don't see significance behind it. But maybe you don't see significance behind it because you don't see the significance for you. God has a path. God has a path. God has a purpose for you. And when you choose to stop ignoring it, when you choose to stop living in apathy, then you'll be able to start walking down the path. Because God will cut away all the excess that's keeping you where you're at. And God will start to push you down that path. And some of you guys need to give yourself to God or back to God because you've been ignoring Him for too long. There is a path. That path is a choice. It's a choice. That's really what I want to get from you guys today, and what I want to get to you guys today is a choice. It's a choice. It's a decision. Everything's a decision. Ignoring is a decision. Ignorance is a decision. Complacency is a decision. Apathy is a decision. And what we ignore, we ultimately lose the purpose of. Don't lose the purpose behind yourself because you don't want to put God first. Don't lose your purpose. Don't lose your purpose. Some of you guys need to give yourself to God today. And if you do, go ahead and leave a comment. Give me an email. Something. Reach out. Reach out to me. Reach out to people around you. And we would love to help you grow around being a person who embraces God rather than ignores Him. I hope you guys have a great week. And I'll see you guys all later.